Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker to you and we'll get started. So we have Sharon with us today, and Sharon has worked for many years in the university system, and after pretty much a full career in the university system, she switched and became a nonprofit executive for over 20 years. In the last 10 years, she's been a full-time community volunteer. She volunteers in organizations related to homelessness, workforce development, and mental health, doing what she calls missionary work. During her nonprofit career, she founded a 5-star daycare and a feeding program at her church for the homeless and needy in Greensboro. And she also founded Step Up Greensboro, which is an employment and life skills program for those who need a second chance. Currently, she's on the board of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is NAMI, and she's on the North Carolina board, and she just finished a board term on the Wake County Board of Directors. She's a Stephen minister at her church, and she's the chair of the Mental Health Task Force. She comes to us today with all of that background, but also as a caregiver. She's a mother of a son, grandson, and granddaughter who live with mental illness, and she's also the caregiver of her husband who has Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. So she's coming at this from all angles, and we're so excited to have her join us. So let's make sure, Sharon, that you are unmuted. Can you? Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the webinar on behalf of NAMI Wake County and Dementia Alliance of North Carolina. I'm happy to be here today and share my story and some of the experiences I've had, and to give some wisdom learned in relation to how you endure and do a good job with caregiving. I could also take lessons from all of you, I'm sure, but I'm here today to share my story. And as Lisa said earlier, with the pandemic, things have gotten more difficult for caregivers. Just a stat here before I open up, 43% of caregivers have reported that their mental health is worse since the pandemic has arrived. And then 27% of them say their physical health was worse than before the pandemic, compared to 18% of non-caregivers. So it's making the job more difficult for many people. Many aspects of caregiving are important, and we have to recognize that there's a lot to learn and lots to share in order for all of us to be doing what we do. Our focus today, however, is all about you, not about the people you serve. It's the caregiver strong we're looking for, reviving and harnessing your personal talents for the job to be the best caregiver you can be. So you'll not hear much about the person that you're serving who has dementia, or the person that you're caring for. It's all about you and strength and resilience in caregiving. Many caregivers live a life of desperation, and they just try to make it through this important responsibility that they have agreed to do. How do you make it through? That's really what we're talking about with strength and resilience. It's my belief that these are the two bricks in the foundation of caregiving that can make a difference. Difference in the kind of caregiver you are, difference in the quality of care that you're able to provide for the person that you serve in your situation, and the difference in your success and satisfaction and fulfillment with the caregiver job. So my personal story in the introduction, she gave you much of this, so I'll move through this rather quickly. The picture you see here is my husband, who at this point is 87 years old and has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia for the past 2 years. Now, obviously, like all of you who serve a person with dementia, we saw it coming and gradually it appeared. And now we are living with more rapid symptoms arriving daily that affect the lives of Emmett as well as me and the children. So the experiences also include a son and granddaughter who both have mental illness. My son was diagnosed at about 48 or so. Interesting that, usually people are diagnosed earlier in life, but this happened at midlife, and at this point, he's disabled and not able to work. And he has 3 children, and at least 2 of those children have some form of mental illness. The granddaughter, who's the middle child, is the one who suffers the most. I grew up with a mother who had mental illness in the teen years of 13 to 17 in rural North Carolina. I was the only person present in the household. So whether I wanted to be a caregiver or not, it just sort of fell to me. And at the time, I didn't know it or realize that I was learning caregiving until all these years later when I grew up and realized the situation I did grow up in and the things that it taught me and the things it helped me identify about myself and the traits that it instilled in me that have made me the person that I am. But at the time, I didn't realize it was about survival in one of the most important phases in my life, and I made the best of it. We also, as she has pointed out, have worked in many community organizations that required caregiving of one form or another. And my most recent mission has been working with NAMI, Wade County, and NAMI, North Carolina. I have trained to teach classes to family members on how to support, advocate, and live with their family members who have mental illness. And there are always lots of challenges. So I have learned lots from other people through that experience. In addition, we have the opportunity to do programs in the community, such as one like this today. And I've done many of those in helping people learn more about their caregiving of the mentally ill. So these experiences have helped me grow in many ways. And what we need to realize is that all of them are different for everybody. Nobody has the same experience, and I'm still learning. So how have I been able to provide the caregiving that I have done? Strength. That's the first thing we want to talk about today. And it is more than being physically strong. Now, I will not deny that it takes being physically strong because you have to push and pull and move and do lots of things with the person that you care for that requires physical strength. And the title of caregiver doesn't come with a job description. So you do as much as you can, as well as you can, and as long as you can. And you juggle the many roles associated with it. So it's important to take care of your body and be able to do those physical things. But the thing we're going to concentrate on today is personal strength. It's just as important. And that means taking care, whatever the situation might be. You may feel or try to ignore a number of the emotions that you might have in this process. But we're going to also talk about why they're important and how they can help you grow. So how do we recognize and apply the strengths of caregiving? One of the things, if I ask you, what are you good at? Many of you would say, oh, not much. I don't know much, or I don't do much, or whatever. But you're all strong to different degrees, and there are different traits that you have that make you strong. So one of the ways in which you determine that is recognizing and applying your strengths. And you can do this by asking yourself a few questions. And I've listed some here. So what is it that you feel you were born to do? Maybe you don't really have a feeling about what you were born to do. But if you're satisfied and fulfilled in life, you will have reached some degree of understanding of what your purpose is. Most importantly, what gives me energy? Nothing gives me more energy than being a part of a group that is working to serve others and making a difference in their lives and their families' lives. That just turns me on. And encourages and inspires and gives me the energy to do a lot of things that otherwise I wouldn't do. And if it's not making me happy doing it, I move on and don't do that anymore, because it has to help me grow, be a better person, and be fulfilling in some way. Another question you might ask is, you see situations, how would I handle that? As you think about how you would handle something, you begin to identify the strengths that you might apply to that situation that may help solve whatever that might be. And only way you can get to know your strengths in this way is really reflect upon you and yourself and how you would handle different things. This reflection helps you discover your personal power sources. It gives you permission to think about what motivates and excites you. And it also helps you see where you might use your talents and gifts. You know, God has not blessed us with the traits and the talents we have for no purpose. So this reflection process can help you in identifying that for yourself. The other thing about all of this is that recognizing and applying these strengths to caregiving can re-inject your life with a sense of power and control that the stress of taking care of your loved one has taken away. Actually, it helps everyone. It helps you and it helps the person you're caring for. But what the difference is when you feel stronger and more in control, happier, and better able to take care of your elderly loved one. I had to get rid of that little screen that came up. Well, my slide is not advancing, Lisa. There we go. So the next thing to look at is, what are some of the strengths that you might identify? Have you ever sat down and had a conversation with a friend and said to that friend, what do you see my strengths to be? That feedback from other people can also help you in the reflection process that I've recommended. So as we look at our list here and think about whether the word reflects you all of the time, sometimes, or hardly ever. And just go down the list. Resilience, first of all. We'll talk about that in more detail in just a minute. I see myself as being resilient. I would say in my case, I would answer that all of the time, because I've been told over and over, you are so resilient, which means I have been through a lot of experiences and came out of it stronger and understanding what my talents and etc. were. But there are no right or wrong answers to any of these. I see myself as patient. That's not one of the things I consider my strongest suit, but I'm fairly patient. Patience in many cases is not as strong in some people as they might like for it to be. And the patience, of course, means the capacity to accept or tolerate trouble, delay, what's not going right, without getting upset or angry. Flexibility means you're ready and able to change or adapt to the different circumstances. And in caregiving, everything changes by the minute, I'm sure you find, or by the hour, or by the day. Every day is a new circumstance. But it helps you to be flexible in the moment and get through whatever the situation might be. Compassion is the ability to translate empathy into action, and it helps people alleviate or have their suffering alleviated when you show compassion toward them and what's wrong. Optimism is absolutely necessary, because that means you are expecting a positive outcome and you are doing and living whatever way you have to help make this a positive situation for this person. And when it is positive, of course, it's a better life. Confidence, believing in yourself and what your abilities are and how you can serve is in the capacity as a caregiver. And of course, the way things go most of the time, you have to have some organizational skills. You may have to make schedules. You may have to reorganize the layout of a room or the space in which you're doing the caregiving. You have to have some organizational skills that you bring to that process. And lastly, you have to have the ability to laugh. It's not a happy situation always, but you have to take the small moments that present themselves and laugh. Sometimes you're laughing at yourself, and that's okay. That's very positive, actually, because it means you have a better understanding of yourself. At any rate, look at this list. Think about which ones of these you can claim as your strengths and how many of these things you possess. And there are other things that could be on this list. This is just an example of some things. Now, moving to resilience, what does resilience mean? Sounds like it has a shaded kind of meaning that it's not real clear what resilience is. It's hard to describe. It lacks clarity by just saying the word. In the dictionary, it says to recover from or adjust to each misfortune or change that you might encounter. So it means you're going to get through it. There's no going back. And you're going to be looking for the things, you're not going to be looking for things the way they used to be. Because in caregiving, it's not likely they're going to be the way they used to be. That's for sure. So resilience is really not about bouncing back. It's about growing through it. Notice I didn't say getting through it. I said growing through it. So in that process of moving through the situation or the event, you will learn many things and you will come out stronger on the other side, and you will have an experience that you can apply to some other event or situation in your life. So how do you discover to be resilient? These are just some ways. There may be others, but these are the ones I'm going to share at this particular time. First and most important, perhaps, is this positiveness, practicing intelligent optimism. You know, when I think about caregiving, there's not many bright, positive sparks in many people's days. And as a caregiver, you're the person who has to bring that positive attitude that may make a difference in how the day goes. So practice this optimism. Next step would be to let go of the past and move on. There's not anything you can do about what has happened or the situation you're in or how this person became at the stage they're at and so forth. So you just have to accept it and move on to the next stage and phase. Living in the past is not going to be helpful. Next, reach out to your family and see how you might grow together. Most people have some small number of family members. You may be the person who is a caregiver, but what's important here is that we have a team working on this situation together. Having you feel supported as the caregiver by that team. Having this team be helpful. And if they don't reach out to you, you reach out to them and see how you might involve them in the activities of caregiving to make them feel important or needed, and at the same time to provide help to you, which is so important because the job is hard. It's lasting and long and takes a lot of energy. The next piece is to show up with empathy and humility. When you begin to realize that you're not alone, you find strength in that itself. One of the things I think about is when I first came to Raleigh and lived in Wake County, it was in the beginning stages of my son's illness. And every day I literally walked on eggshells, not knowing what was next because he has strong suicidal tendencies. So every day I was walking on eggshells, not knowing what to do, what to say, how to help, how to support, because I didn't know much at that point. And what I learned is that when I joined a support group of NAMI and went to that group for help, I found other people had things so much worse than what I had. And I would leave the support group each night I attended feeling so positive and so much better and so much stronger, because I found out I was not alone in this. I wasn't the only one who had to live this way. And at the same time, I also learned that many people had it much worse than I did. And that gave me strength. It inspired me to move forward and to be more positive and to do more of what I didn't know how to do or what to do. So that was a great experience. You might find that helpful in your life in caregiving too. And I know that the Dementia Alliance has support groups, so check it out. I think it's an important place for you to learn and to also feel like you're not alone. Feeling like you're not alone is very, very important. And lastly, recall. Recall a time when you were resilient in the past. Can't tell you how important that is, because think about the things you do and the things you know. We often pull from the past learnings that we have had that help us move forward to the future. And so recalling that time that you were resilient gives you an example of what your thoughts were, how you were feeling about it, what you did to move forward. And that is just a good self-model of how you can be strong and do this again. So recalling, I think, is really very important. You know, when you reflect on your life today, you can think back of how you learned certain things. And that is part of what made you the person who you are and part of what made you grow the resilience that you have. So self-reflection is important here. In many ways, resilience is based on the idea that if you can't change your circumstances, you change your reaction to them. Having a pity party every day is not going to be what's going to give you resilience. Changing your attitude and your reaction to the situation is. And all of this will provide an inward strength that you didn't realize that you had. And that strength will support and guide you to do the right things and to do the best things you can. As we have caregiving, it's important to recognize that there may be many emotions associated with this. And these emotions can sometimes get us down, but sometimes being aware of what they are helps you find the solution to move forward. So I've listed here some common emotions that people have in caregiving. Not everybody will have all of these, but these are some common ones that are experienced in caregiving. So let's look at them briefly and see what we have here. Sometimes you may feel shame. Why would you feel shame when you're looking after somebody and doing a decent job? Well, you might have failed on some small aspect, some little moment that made a difference in that person's day or made a difference in that person's progress. Because all of us have expectations of what we hope to accomplish when we take on a responsibility. So not meeting the expectations you have of yourself or that person not meeting the expectations may cause shame on your part. Nothing to be shamed about, except where we are and think about, is my expectation too high? Maybe this is not realistic, that we think this person can learn to feed themselves all by themselves at this particular time. And I actually saw a seminar yesterday by Teepa Snow, and I was real interested in one of the things that she was teaching in the seminar, and that was how to help someone feed themselves who had advanced Alzheimer's. And basically what the technique is that she was holding their hand or their wrist and guiding the spoon into the mouth, previously what the group had been trying to do to feed this person was to get them to open their mouth, and they wouldn't open it. They wouldn't eat. And so the problem was these people are not eating. But she discovered a technique where when she guided, they felt like they were feeding themselves, and they actually opened their mouth when she guided the spoon to their lips, and etc. So they couldn't figure all that out for themselves, but with guidance from a caregiver, they were able to do that. So that's a much better way of meeting an expectation than feeling shameful or like you're a failure in accomplishing something. Another common emotion is guilt. And the best thing to do here is to be kind to yourself when you're feeling those guilt feelings. So what might you feel guilt about? You probably could name 20 things that you may feel every day or every week. And many of us, when we feel guilty, we think, oh, we can get this done, and you push even harder, which is not necessarily good for you, because you're pushing yourself harder and creating a stress that makes the situation worse. So be kind and compassionate to you. Resentment may show up in several forms, but one I can think of is that you just struggle with this process and think about how much has been taken away from you because you have taken on this responsibility in your family. So you may resent your siblings or other people in the family who are not helping as much as you thought they should. And that resentment is just a negative feeling that is not healthy, and one that you need to turn around and make in a positive attitude. Next one is blame. That's not being accountable for something that happened. You blame yourself for the problem or the issue or the failure or whatever the situation might be. Again, be kind to yourself. It's not always your fault, even though you might blame yourself. I could have done better. I should have known better. I wish I could have made that happen. None of those are positive thoughts that give you positive energy for caregiving responsibilities. Depression is really not an emotion, but depression will form when you have an accumulated, unattended box of emotions stored up within your brain or body. Not resolving your shame, your guilt, resentment and blame. Pushing it down and not talking about it, not figuring out how to make this a better situation can lead to depression. That can become serious depression and affect your ability to do your job and lead to burnout. So by all means, these emotions are normal many times. They may be unique to a particular situation, but the important thing is talk it out with someone. It may be a friend, it may be a family member, it may be a therapist. Any or all of those are appropriate for the situation, depending on what it is. And if those emotions are not resolved, then as I said, you are burying them and bringing on stress to your body by not talking about being transparent and etc. And of course, that can often lead to mental illness, which is what NAMI does and why this is a strong related subject to dementia and Alzheimer's. Lastly, we have grief listed here. And grief in my personal story has a lot to do with loss. Grief associated with both Alzheimer's and mental illness, in what I think about probably more than anything else, is the things that my loved ones have lost that I miss, and that causes me grief. And some of you have had loss and have gone through grief and know what that's like. It's not a happy situation and it can make you sick. So it's important to talk about those losses and acknowledge what they are and how they are affecting that person's life and how they are affecting your life, and learn to accept the situation. Not until I moved through many emotions and much reflection to what I call radical acceptance was I able to let go of some of the grief and loss that I have experienced, both with my son, granddaughter, and now with my husband. This grief is just beginning with my husband because he's in the early stages of Alzheimer's. But each time I become aware and acknowledge something he's lost, I have lost it too, because it was one of the traits or the attributes that he had that make us a good couple, that make us have a happy life together. So, you know, at this point, I'm doing all the financial stuff, and before I did say my part. Now it's all my responsibility. And that's okay. I don't mind doing that, and I'm capable of doing that. But when you start taking on all of the things that he used to do, along with the things that you do, the load sometimes becomes overwhelming or unbearable. So it's important to recognize that those losses definitely can have an effect on you. In the case of my son, the things that he has lost is a wonderful career. He was an engineer, had a successful job, living what most of us would call the good life. And now he's not able to do that anymore. He does not have the motivation, the focus, or the herewithal to practice engineering in any way. And furthermore, the liability associated with his illness and doing that job would not be appropriate. With his illness, he has lost, I'd say, 50% of his memory, which includes much of the things he might have learned when he was in school to study engineering. There's so many things that he doesn't remember anymore. So we're going to look at this NAMI model to talk about predictable stages of emotional reaction. And what we're interested in here is looking at this model and recognizing that people go through 2 or 3 stages in dealing with their emotional reactions and how they handle the situation. First of all, they find themselves dealing with a catastrophic event. Oh, I can't believe this has happened. This is awful. I don't know what we're going to do. Those are some of the thoughts and emotions that come to your mind. And during this time, you are really upset. You're confused. You're in denial. No, he's going to get better. I know he is. This is not happening like this. You even may normalize some of the behaviors that aren't normal at all. You may be in a crisis. There's all kinds of chaos. And I can't tell you how many times we have experienced this with my granddaughter and her mental illness. It's not a good thing. It's extremely stressful. We find many families that come to the family classes and basic classes not knowing what to do and not knowing how to deal with it. And that uncertainty of not knowing how to deal with a situation is stressful, stressful, stressful. I can't tell you how stressful it is. And you feel like there's no hope and that your family is helpless in dealing with this. And there may be times when you are helpless. You have to learn to cope, which is the second stage. And when you're in that stage, you usually are expressing anger and guilt and resentment and recognition and grief. And so this is an important time for you to talk about your feelings and learn some of the skills that are important to learn to cope. You have the same situation in caregiving. And then lastly, you move into a more positive stage, moving into advocacy, where you learn to understand and what to do about it when it happens, or you learn to accept it, as I talked about radical acceptance a few minutes ago. But the important thing is you learn appropriate actions to deal with the situation. So you can go through all these 3 stages. In fact, you do go through all these 3 stages. All you have to do is reflect on some kind of caregiving event and think about, reflect upon what happened when that occurred. First of all, it was chaos and a big event and a crisis, and everybody was running around not knowing exactly what to do. The next stage, after things got settled down and the solution was found for the immediate crisis, you begin to have feelings about it that you are going to express, but you learn from that possibility and you learn how to deal with it the next time. And you may never, in some cases, move into some kind of advocate kind of position. These are the two most common ones in stress and etc. But the important thing for you to recognize is this is normal. There's nothing wrong with you if you are reacting as I have described in these different stages. This is normal behavior. I might wonder what's wrong with you if you didn't have some of these behaviors and emotions as you move through an event or situation. So how do you make it better for yourself? How do you overcome some of what's happening here? As you go through each one of these stages, you have specific needs. And if you can have these needs met, then things get better and you are developing or building resilience for future situations. So for example, when there's this catastrophic event, your needs are you need support. You may need empathy. You need to be comforted. You need to find resources. Where do I get help for this? Or should he go to the hospital or whatever? You need a prognosis so there's less uncertainty about what you can expect next. You need to find an early intervention, a help that works. And of course, many of you can turn to the Dementia Alliance for their resources and referrals that they can make for you. Having support and empathy and comfort and etc. help you get through the situation, help you build resilience for the next time. Then in the second stage, learning to cope, what's important here is filling your needs of having somebody to vent your feelings with, having a network that you can call on for support, and sharing of things that of how they handled a situation like this. So you might learn this in a support group. Or in my case, I can't tell you how much my reading and learning increased trying to learn more about mental illness and now Alzheimer's disease as I deal with the situations presented to me. So you have to do this if you're going to have hope. And hope is a very strong thing that keeps you going. And in this process of learning to cope, you need to learn a lot about self-care, how to take care of yourself. Because if you have not taken care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one, or you will burn out and fizzle up. May need to learn some new skills, may need to go to programs or educational classes or attend webinars to learn all you can about different techniques that can work with dementia patients. And you're going to need to figure out the healthcare system and learn how to get cooperation and support from that too, because that's one of the things that can be very frustrating in both dementia and mental illness. And then moving into advocacy, your needs at that time is to just get balance restored and get responses from the system that you actually approach to get help from. When these needs are met in each one of these stages, then we are strong, we develop resilience, and we're able to move forward. And in the case of NAMI, an all-volunteer situation, and I'm not sure about the Dementia Alliance, but in the case of NAMI, it brings many volunteers to the forefront to share what they have learned and what they know to help other family members. And that is a very satisfying kind of experience in itself, and one that should not be ignored or taken lightly. So one of the ways you can take care of yourself and be better in what you're doing here is to make affirmations to yourself. This can be a part of self-care. And what are some examples of affirmations? I am enough. I can do this job. I have enough skill to make this work. I have learned enough ways to communicate with a person with dementia that I can make their life more satisfying. A second one, I love myself and I accept I will have good days and bad days here. They won't all be good and they won't all be bad. Let's take them for what they are as they come and do the best that you can. And as I've mentioned earlier, I'm not alone. I can call my friend Susie and learn that she's dealing with the same thing. And knowing that you're not alone gives you courage and strength to move forward. And lastly, one that I think is very important, I am thankful for my loved ones. And as you see in the picture on the screen, to care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors. It's a privilege to be able to have the opportunity to support and care for the people that you love. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's sometimes a burden, but there's something about family and loved ones and the connection you have with them that make it a positive experience also. And so I don't want us to forget the possibility of that and how it can affect our lives, because it's very important. So how do we find our strength as a caregiver in some of those situations that we just saw? There are many little things you can do that you might not even think about, or they don't relate to caregiving, you think, but when you practice them, you discover that they help you bounce back on a daily basis and that they are very important. And when you bounce back, it's part of that resilience process. So first thing listed here, and this shouldn't be any surprise, is you have to set boundaries. But you say, oh, well, I've got to get all of this done for my person I'm caring for. Or I need to figure out a better solution to how we do this. But whatever you do, set some boundaries in doing it. For example, I have a situation with my son and his family where one of the ways in which I support them is to offer them dinner probably about 4 nights a week. The other nights they find a way to find dinner on their own. But my son has no interest, even though he used to be a gourmet cook, in preparing food at all. The children don't necessarily have that skill, though they're learning. And so in order to have nutritious food for health, I offer a well-balanced dinner several nights a week. But I have a boundary. I'm not going to do it every night. And so we've sort of set up a system at different times during the caregiving time period here, where it may have varied from what it is right now. Right now, it's every other night. And so that gives me a chance to feel like I still have time for me, time to do other things I'm responsible for, but at the same time, offer the meal which I have been committed to give and want to continue to do. And I enjoy feeding other people. It's a satisfying experience. And so I want to do that. Another piece is be gentle on yourself. There's no rule book for how you do things necessarily. You're going to have some successes and you're going to have some failures. And regardless of which way it falls, be gentle on yourself. Find a friend, a therapist who can listen and help. And frankly, in my life and my story, I have different friends that I call on for different things. First of all, you may visit a therapist, and that's great. Recognize and accept the fact that you may need a therapist. Secondly, I may have a friend that I want to talk to about mental health issues, or I may have a friend that I want to talk to about Alzheimer's issues, or I have issues that I just want to talk about myself, or I want to be and talk with these people because they're fun and they meet a certain need at a certain time. So be gentle with yourself, call on different people at different times who feel different needs for you. Forgiveness, I don't really have to talk much about forgiveness. We all know that we can't hold grudges and move forward in a positive way. And so considering forgiveness and letting go of something that you didn't like or hurt you is very important. Follow your faith. Without faith, many of us could not accomplish what we accomplished. It gives us hope. It's part of the journey toward acceptance of the situation we have, and it's just important. And if you don't practice religion, find faith in what you believe and meaning in the care that you provide to that person. Change it up. It's hard to be caregiver all the time. We need relief. We need a break. We need respite. We need distraction from the responsibility. So change it up and find ways to take these moments. I read recently where someone sets their watch or their clock wherever they are, and every day in the morning they set their clock to go off at 5 different times during the day. So they will actually set it to alarm or do something 5 different times. And when the clock goes off, they take a break, they do some deep breathing, they bring some kind of normalcy to their life at that particular time to relieve some stress. A lot of times we need to just reset our thinking. Obviously, we need to seek support from family members or friends or professionals. And through all of this, we will learn and grow and recognize and say to yourself sometimes, I should have known better. I will do it this way next time. Feed your feelings, use affirmations as we talked about. And as I mentioned earlier, remember to laugh. So coping, there can be negative coping and positive coping. And on the right, you see a picture of a maze. When you're using negative coping strategies, it feels like you're going through a maze and you can never find your way out. So it's important to use some of the strategies listed here to use or to do away with this negative coping. Self-talk, pushing negative emotions down and pretending that you don't feel them. That's not healthy. Distracting yourself from stress rather than facing what you are experiencing. It's still going to be there when you get back to it, so go ahead and face it. Blaming somebody else. Thinking about situations being horrible or unbearable. I just can't go to work and face this another day. Pretending challenge does not exist or will go away over time. None of those are positive ways to cope with the situation. And when we have negative coping, then we move toward burnout in a faster, more positive way. And burnout often leads to sickness, where you have to give up the responsibility, or you have to maybe put the person in some kind of assisted living or memory facility. So it's important that you not reach this burnout stage. Positive coping, positive self-talk, asking for and getting help. This is where you call the family team in and say, I can't do it this way anymore. I need some help. Set your boundaries when you have that talk of what you want them to do or what you are willing to do in the future. Finding support, laughing, mind-body approaches, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, deep breathing, all of those kinds of things can be a relief. And focusing on regret, not guilt, forgiving yourself, these things we've just mentioned in another slide. So all of this leads to living in the moment. Every day has its stresses, but it's important to find the little moments of success and joy and happiness in whatever we do or your person that you're looking after does. Celebrate the little things and the good things that happen. Find joy in the good moments of caregiving. They do happen, and they're very, very important. And finding the joy and celebrating and etc. is both good for you, the family, and the person you're caring for. And looking for the good is powerful. All of these suggestions help relieve stress or make less stress and help you get through the process of caregiving with positive attitudes and with greater satisfaction and happiness. I'm going to close with this little prayer for caregivers called burnout protection. So let me just read this together with you. Light in the darkness, being a caregiver is an enormous privilege. Thank you. Many times the duties take all I have and there's nothing left to give. I feel discouraged until I remember that you're the one who placed me here in this home and have given me this responsibility. Holy Spirit, please prompt me daily to seek all I need. I do not want to burn out because the road back is hard. Help me not to work only with my abilities, but keep me, Lord, in your perfect strength. Amen. So it's a good thing to close on because it reminds us of some of the points we've talked about today. And it's inspiring to know that the faith displayed in these words also gives you hope and makes a positive situation. I am inspired by each one of you and what you do on a daily basis. And I know that your job is not easy. And I share with you that my job is not easy. But you know what? I wouldn't trade my job for anything else. I'd like to have the load lighter sometimes, but it's something I feel that's very important in my life and very important in the people's lives that I'm connected with here. And the outside people that I have learned about and become friends with or have relationships with have also made me a stronger person and made me a better person. So I'm in for the long haul, whatever that might be. And most of us will have a long haul. Thank you for all you do. And if we have some questions, we'll entertain those at this time.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was very inspirational. We do have a question. I think it was from Regina. She wanted to know what type of self-care things do you do personally to stave off burnout?
One of the things that I used to do more, and I'm trying to get back to it this time, is leisure reading. I say leisure reading because I read so much professional stuff. But, you know, reading just a good old book that you just sit down and read in a sitting or read in a weekend and you don't want to leave it for any purpose. I get lost in that kind of reading and distracted from whatever my stress and worries are. That's extremely helpful. So whatever it might be for you, find something like that you can get lost in. It may be music. It may be some hobby you have. Sometimes I've done crafts with the granddaughter and we get so lost and into those craft projects that we think the world is great as we move from that project to the next thing on our list. And of course, it's very good for her as well as me. Another thing is exercise. We all know the benefits of exercise, but it takes on a new meaning in terms of how it may change brain chemistry, attitude, perspective, and etc. So find a way to have exercise, I would say 3 to 5 times a week if at all possible. And you're going to say, but I don't have time. Well, maybe while the person that you're looking after is taking a rest, you can slip in a little disc that helps you do some yoga or maybe you know yoga well enough, you can just do 15 minutes of yoga moves and you'll be shocked at how better you will feel during that time. Another thing that I do is mindfulness or meditation and deep breathing. I frequently will just stop and take several good deep breaths, and it seems to wash out all the clutter and wash out all the negative thoughts or feelings of being overwhelmed that I had prior to doing that. And being with people. Don't be isolated. Be social and be with other people. Everybody needs that connection with other people. And it's important to have that connection out of your caregiving kind of situation. All connections are important, but having a neutral connection that's just for you, I think is very important. So those are the things I do. I also spend a lot of volunteer time helping other people in community organizations. And I do that because it's helpful to me. I'm finding that I'm having to give more up because of the time needed to be with my husband and help my husband. So I'll have to find some new things to put on my list that can replace some of the time that I've had with NAMI and other community groups. So those are some of the things I do. I watch some television, but that's just a nothing. That's not something that helps me in a positive way necessarily. It's just a distraction. But, oh, and the other thing I do is gardening. Believe it or not, I had cucumbers and tomatoes this summer, and it brings the family members great joy to see how these plants come along and produce. And it's so much fun to watch them grow. And my husband has found that one of his favorite pastimes as his illness continues is watching the birds. We have a huge deck that backs up to the woods, and feeding and caring for the birds is exciting for him. And of course, I've learned to find it exciting for me. And it's even more exciting when you have 2 bluebird nests all in one season, which we had this spring and last spring. So it's fun to have those things to be around and to be with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have a couple of comments mostly saying thank you and this is wonderful, and they're going to take your information. We are going to share the slides with everyone so they have this to refer to. And Lee, thank you for reminding us. Lee says take care of yourself, put on your oxygen mask first.
Right.
Before you take care of the other person, and that is so important. So thank you all so much for joining us today. In the comments, we've put the website for NAMI Wake County and for Dementia Alliance North Carolina. Please reach out if you need any help, if you're struggling. We're all here for you, and we thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate all that you do as caregivers, and as Sharon said, thank you so much. You're not alone. If you would like to make any comments or anything, everyone is muted. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you would like. But otherwise, we're just going to say thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.